Hey guys, welcome back to another video today, to another development blog. Number 2, I believe it is. This is my number 2. I hope you guys are doing great, doing wonderful today. So what I wanted to talk to you guys about today is what I have been doing since last time. I uploaded it. I did the dev blog number 1 about 2 weeks ago. So if you guys have not seen it yet, feel free to go watch it. I'll probably post a little card on one of these sides at the beginning of this video or right now at this very moment, and you guys can go click and watch it and then come back here. But otherwise, just wanted to talk to you guys since what I've been doing since the last time I did it to now. It's about like 2 weeks, I think. And I've been working on adding collisions, adding them back to this project. I revamped, refactored the previous versions that I had for the collisions from the old project and updated it and moved them over to this project. I refactored it like a lot of it so that it could fit well in this updated engine, and I'm very excited about it because I feel like it's in a good place right now. So what types of collisions that I've added? I added a box, sphere, capsule colliders, and also plane colliders, and their respective 2D versions of them as well. So let's go into them real quickly, just showing you what they look like right now. So right now I have a box collider. This is the main like AABB type of collisions that you will have in here. Super simple. It will have functions to expand the box. So you'll pass in the vertex positions, and it will expand and update their minimaxes and center of the box, and they will have their functions in here, right? The main function is the intersect function here, but I will also added other functions in here if you wanted to call individual ones by if there was a reason for it, but it isn't here. I'm debating if I should put them back and put them in the private section because I'm not entirely sure yet. I'm debating on that, but for right now, the main function that the physics manager will call when it checks for colliders and see if they are colliding, it will use the intersect function. And if I will go to the CPP file, you notice that in an intersect function, it will then determine what type of collision the other one is, and if it's a box, a sphere, capsule, or a plane, it will do their respective collisions detections, and it will do the things they need to do to determine if they are colliding or not. And it will call the functions over here. And what I like about it is that all the detections are from the utils class. This utils class has all the types of collisions that you will have in here. So we'll do all the intersections for box to box, box to point, sphere to sphere, line segment intersections. And I like it this way because maybe there's sometimes you want to do a collision that maybe you don't want to have a box collider to determine it. All you have to do is just call this function, and all you need is just the minimax point, and it will determine if it collided with it or not. So same thing with sphere and sphere to box. All you have to do is do this, and all you need is a position or a radius and a minimax, and that's it, right? Maybe, and I think that's super sweet that it's done this way because you can then use this without needing a box collider class or a component for an entity. And maybe you want to do some type of raycast or something, you just use this. So I revamped it so it could be reusable, and that's what I like about it. And if they collided, they will have their respective collision infos. And what this info does, basically, it will have the name of the entity that it collided with, the actual entity, the normal, and the depth penetration. So it will determine how much the collisions inside of the other collision, and then you can use the normal and this depth penetration to determine how much you should be moving out. And it has its own respective 2D version of it as well. And their box collider 2D, it's the same exact thing, just vector two versions of them. I'm trying to see if there's a way to combine these two together because basically they do exactly the same thing. But that's where I am at with collisions. I like the way they are in this version of the engine, because before it wasn't this refactored and awesome in how it looks. And when they detect collisions, they have in the base component, it has the collisions functions and callbacks that it will use. It will have the enter states and the exit. So if a collision enters for the first time, we'll call this function. If a collision is within colliding with another one continuously, it will call this function continuously. And then when a collider exits, it will call this function, the exit function. And it also has the trigger versions of them as well, the trigger colliders, if the colliders were triggers. So any component that inherits from the base, I guess every component will be inherited from here. So every component that's inheriting from here will have this callback, and all you have to do is just inherit from them. So let's go into an example. Like, let's say enemy controller. This is the enemy ships that we have right now, and that's the component that, this is the name of the class that inherits from the component. And as long as you override the function, so on collision enter, so when something collides with the ship, it will then call this, and then it will do some stuff in here depending on the type of collision. But for right now, it just prints out a log, prints the name of the current enemy, and then the collider that it collided with. So it prints out the name, and that's what it does right now. The only thing that I'm debating on how I want this to happen. So if I were to go back to component, so the only thing I don't like about this is that every component will have this, right? Even for things that it may not even need. Like maybe for a camera, maybe you don't want a camera. Camera inherits some component, so maybe a camera you don't want to have those functions. Or maybe there's this, I'm trying to figure out a class that may not even need these, but you will have these functions in there even though it's not needed. Like for box collider, they inherit from component, right? So that means that even this box collider has these functions, and it feels kind of weird. And I'm debating if I want to change that to be like a callback. So if any of you guys have used Unreal, the way that they do it is that the colliders has a callback in there, and you will just set the callback to something the function will be called, and it will do it that way. So you will avoid doing this, and all I want to do is just set it like a callback in here, and eventually when you initialize this box collider, you set the callback to a function that you will need it to be called for. So for any component, I will initialize the box collider or something, and then set the callback to equal this one. And then now every time it collides, it will enter and we'll call this function, right? So I'm debating if I want to do it that way or not. Maybe I can ask you guys, maybe like, what are your thoughts about it? What do you guys think? Like, should be best? Should we keep it how it is right now? Because this is how Unity does it, right? Like every model behavior has these functions. So even for things that inheriting from model behaviors that don't need collisions, it will inherit from this and it will call. Or should I have it how Unreal has it, which is just a callback? What are you guys' thoughts on this? But for now, I feel like I'm gonna go with the Unreal version of it eventually. But for now, it's okay. I'll leave it like this. But I have plans to maybe change it in the future. But I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. You guys have any thoughts and all that? But yeah, that's all the things that I've done with collisions. I'm trying to look at my bullet list and see and make sure I talked about everything that I added. Yeah, that seems about it. Besides that, I also added my spatial partitioning back, which, if you guys don't know what that is basically a way to make collision detection faster. So the playing area will be divided into grids, and each grid, so every object that are within the same grid will detect collisions. And it's done this way so you don't have to detect collisions for an object that's super far that it's never going to be colliding, right? So consider you're in your level and you have grids everywhere, and you have two objects in one of those grids. Those two objects are gonna try to detect if they're colliding, and this way it spreads out the collisions and makes it more performant. So I added that back, and of course I refactored it so it's a lot different now, and I like it. It's looking good. I added frustum culling back, so any objects that are not within the bounds of the camera view, they're not rendering. And that's about it. So let's run it. There's nothing different at this very moment. It still looks the same because everything was just had to do with collisions, right? I don't think I even showed you guys last time, but I print out my current use of memory because I use my own allocator. So I print out all the stuff that I've used and what kind of memory I've been using for every section of it. It will determine how much memory I've been using. So yeah, so this is where I'm running right now. I fixed my shaders. So if I were to go to here, I mean, if you remember from the previous video, everything was like all the asteroids were super shiny. Ooh, hey, we have an enemy. You see all these enemies? This is super awesome. That's what I love about this game. So yeah, so as you notice, I fixed all the lighting of the shaders, so the standard shader that I have, so they look a lot better. I still don't like the texture of this, so ignore the fact that this texture looks weird on this asteroid just because it's not meant for this asteroid. I need to find a better one, but for now it's okay. I'll leave it as is. But it's not as shiny as it was before. So that's what I like about it. So that's where I'm at. So definitely like that. This is my ship. You notice that has a specular lighting on it, which is super cool as well. I enjoy. It's super awesome. I may have to make it a little bit smaller, but I'm not. It wasn't like that in the last dev blog. But once I fix the shaders, that's how it looks like now with the specular lighting. So I fixed that for now. I may have to tweak it a little bit more. I added projectiles, so you can see for now just kind of ugly and kind of like an ugly green right now. But eventually it will have bloom. It will look a lot better. But right now I'm able to shoot. Oops. As you notice, I can see all the debug logs when I spawn a projectile. And now I'm shooting here and shooting at the asteroids, and you can see that on collision enter, you can see that it collided with the entity. Right now I don't have an actual, let's fix that. I think by default they're called entities, but if you don't set a name for them. But let's fix that, shall we? So let's go in here real quick. Let's go to gameplay scene. And let's call this entity. For now, just call it projectile. Nothing crazy right now. And then let's go into the asteroids real quick. In here. Oops. And this name is asteroid for now. This should fix it. So let's build it. Let's run it. I want to push this to the side so you guys can see the logs as well. There you go. And now you can see projectile collided with the asteroid. And there's that. The asteroids do not have a collision enter, otherwise I will see it here and it will say asteroid collided with which doesn't make sense. Asteroid collided with a projectile, but you can't do that if you overwrite that collider. If you overwrite this collision enter on the asteroid as well, and you put a debug log on it as well, you can see also the collision for it. But that's about it. I'm showing you the debug logs for this, for the projectiles detecting collisions. So that's where I'm at right now, guys. Nothing too crazy. Nothing too crazy yet. Nothing completely new since last time. But that's because I'm just working on collisions, and that's something I needed to do. And then we have some enemies over here just flying around doing their own thing. They don't do much other than just roam around. That's about it. I'm enjoying this. I gotta add more asteroids in here and all that. So that's where I'm at, guys. But I do enjoy this engine. This engine is super awesome. You can do a lot of things with this engine. I can't just show you how easy it is to create something super fast. Yeah, let's do that. I got time. How much time do I have right now? 20 minutes. Yeah, I can show you something real quick, guys. Let's see how easy it is to create something in this engine. Let's close all of this stuff over here. Let's start from scratch. Right. So let's pretend this is a brand new project. This is the project that you have. Ignore it. Let's pretend you don't have these, because you can have the DLLs and you can hook up those DLLs, and all you have is this. Let's pretend yours is not Space Shooter, but let's pretend Space Shooter is the project name that you created, and this is the first project in here, and you don't have any of this stuff, and all you have to do, let's create a class, or like just a CPP file. This is going to be a CPP file. This is going to be the application name. So let's see, let's call it a dev blog app. So this is the dev blog app for this video. Let's call it dev blog for development blog. So you create that, create the class dev blog app, and you want to inherit from an application. Let's call it application, and you want to inherit from application, which is under the IG core engine namespace. And in here, you want to do a public, call the constructor. So you got dev blog constructor with the application info. I will tell you what this application info is about, and initialize the base class as well. And then you will have on application ready, and this application ready gets called once everything is initialized. The engine is initialized, the Vulkan API or whatever rendering API that it's going to be using is ready. Once everything is ready and set and initialized, it will call this function. That you want to initialize the external functions, which that one is under the entry point, under core folder entry point, and you want to initialize. Let me just get all that stuff out of here. You want to initialize the external functions for the graphics context and the render core, and that, as I mentioned in the last video, this is what tells you what kind of rendering API it's going to be using. Let me make sure I have these header files in here. You want to include the Vulkan graphics context and the render core, or whatever rendering APIs can be. Maybe in the future, if I have OpenGL, it will be OpenGL graphics concept, but for right now it's Vulkan. And you want to include those files so that you can call these external functions. And this is where, let's name this dev blog app, the name. So this is the application info. It will tell you what kind of information that application is going to be named. So when it creates the windows, this is the name of the window it's going to be called, and then some command line arguments. So maybe this application you ran it as that with some arguments with it, and it also saves it in here and returns a pointer to that, to the blog app, so it knows that you want to use that. you want to use that application, your own application. And the next thing you want to add, you want to inherit from a scene. So like if you've done like on Unreal or on Unity, you create a scene, right? So you want to do the same thing here. For right now, let's do a header file. Let's call it a depth block scene. And let's do another one for the CPP file. And in this header file, all you want to do, super simple, include the vulkan scene, because this is a vulkan API rendering, right? So you want to inherit from vulkan scene, and then call your class. Call your class, do all the stuff you got to do. And let's create these functions and the CPP file. I thought I was going to create all that stuff for me. Actually, I didn't. Yeah, I'm surprised I didn't create all these other ones over here. And basically, now that you created these scenes, the application app that I talked about earlier, the depth block app, the application ready, you gotta initialize the engine to know that this is the scene that you want to render or want to use. You will call the engine. I gotta initialize the engine, include the engine header file, include the header file, and also include the comment. Your comment also has the allocation. And you want to include the actual scene that you just created, the depth block scene. Let me exclude my own classes because that's not what you guys can have. And if I build it, I have an error. Syntax error. Oh, I have a double. There we go. Let's build it again. And we have a gameplay initialize. Most likely, probably I want to exclude this then. There we go. There we go. So if we were to run it, you're not going to have anything in here. That's probably the reason why it crashes on me right now. Oh, you know why? I forgot. So in initialize, you also want to make sure you initialize the base class. So on the scene class that you created, you want to make sure you initialize the base class as well, because it does some stuff with creation with the camera and all that. And once that gets built, ran it, and there you go. Nothing crazy going on because you haven't done anything. But let's say you have some let's say you have some models, right? So let's include some of the models that I have temporarily. Real quick, I included my ship, the material that the ship is using, and in here, all you have to do. Then the next thing, all you have to do is do that. Include the component and the mesh renderer includes header files, and that's it. Or maybe not, it's not it. Oh, I forgot to include the header files for the managers and all that. Let's include it right now. All right, let's build it. Let's run it. And there you go. Now you have your ship down there. It doesn't do anything. It's because all you did was just create the entity and the mesh renderer for it, and it renders. And the thing that took longer is just creating the classes. So just to recap, the depth block application is the main thing that you want to create when you're creating a new project. You initialize the application. The application ready is the function that's going to be called after everything is initialized and the render API is ready. And you gotta set up the external functions. These external functions, as I mentioned in the last video, are external functions from my core engine, and all you have to do is just initialize it in here and tell it what kind of rendering API you want to use. For right now is using Vulkan, so you will use the Vulkan graphics context and the renderer core, and tell it what kind of application you want to create, and you want to use the application that you created, the class that you created on top. That's going to be your main application, and that's about it. And then you create the scene, which is basically the same thing with how Unreal and Unity does it. You have to create a scene and create all the game objects and all that stuff. The same thing here. You create the scene. Make sure you call it initialize, because this initializes the main stuff for the renderer and the camera. And then all you have to do is just create an entity, set the position, create the mesh rendering component, which is going to be used to render the object, right? And then load that name of the OBJ, and that's about it. Now this is where we at. This is how simple it is. Most of the time it just took creating the actual classes and all that, but after you have that, super simple to create stuff in here. And the next thing is, I have not tested the 2D version of it yet. Oops, I apologize, but that's something to test in the future, because I definitely want to create 2D games here as well and do all that kind of stuff, which is why I created a 2D collisions that I mentioned earlier in the video. But yeah, that's about it, guys. That's all I wanted to talk to you guys about today. The next steps that I want to do, I most likely will probably go and start doing the particle system. I want to start getting that done, because in the previous one, the bullets, when it collides with anything, like with the asteroid, with other enemies, it will emit particles and explosions and all that. So I want to start doing that. And if I have time, because my main goal right now is trying to make videos every 2 weeks. I'm not entirely sure that's how I want to do it, but if I have time within those 2 weeks, I would like to start doing some post effects and start bringing it back the way how the game used to look and feel. So with the fog and all that kind of stuff was super sweet. I can't wait to have that in there. But that's about it, guys. That's about it for this video. So that's my next steps, is to work with particle system to bring that back. And then if there's time, maybe I'll look into the post effects. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you do, feel free to give it some thumbs up. If there's any ideas you guys want, like any feedback that you've seen so far, or for any ideas that you want to see in this video in the future, feel free to mention it. I'm definitely going to be hearing about your feedback, and I want to continue doing this videos. This is something I like doing. It's my passion, and I'd love to hear from you guys too. And there's anything that you want these videos to have in the future, definitely put them in the comments, and I'll be reading them as well. But yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Signing out.